Hi there, my name is Max McLeod. I'm host of Current Affairs Club, and I'm here at the Brisbane March for Palestine. It is the 24th of August 2025, and we're here to interview some people who are involved in marching, maybe some of the organisers as well, see their views directly from them instead of just getting them through the media or through other sources, and hope you enjoy. Hi there, so we have our first interviewee. So how long have you been involved in this movement?
Probably 25 years.
25 years?
Then.
Wow.
1948, the genocide, war crimes since then. Israel was created as a terrorist state. No one knows, but the whole history of the Zionist project is terrorism, like mass murder and terrorism and lying, and it started in way before 1948, but that was a culmination with the Rothschild-Balfour Declaration and all the horrific things that Zionism has brought to the world, including 9/11 with Silverstein and urban moving systems and, you know, the dancing Israelis, Building 7, which nobody ever bothers to look up, but that was a Zionist project as well. So look into that. Urban moving systems, Building 7, Silverstein and Bibi, and the 6 false flag wars where we slaughtered 1 million human beings.
I can tell you're very passionate.
Yeah. But anyway, you gotta, tell your people to go to like breezy politics. You gotta get truth from truth, because truth hides, and it really hides well these days. So get truth from Jimmy Dawes, always truthful. Breezy politics is good. Hind Rajab Foundation. This is So there's a lot of war crimes going on.
So you've been involved for 25 years, so I imagine you've been to a fair few protests?
Yeah, I'm doing my own thing. I've been to a lot of protests, but protesting doesn't seem to work because people don't really know that they're Goyim. So it's a Jewish supremacist problem. Like, that's not, I love Jews, we got heaps of Jews here, a Jewish voice for peace, everything like that, but supremacism isn't the Judaic Torah law. It's not like a true Torah Jew. It's a Zionist. You got to make that distinction really well. A lot of Jews are protesting with us, especially in Israel. So, it's just the history of Zionism is mass murder, war crimes, white phosphorus. Fucking, they got drones now that make a baby sound, and then the people come out, they shoot them with the actual rifle. Have you seen any of this or know anything about it?
Not that footage specifically, but...
Okay, look into that. They just buried 15 medics in handcuffs. That's a war crime. They murdered 243 journalists. That's a war crime. These are legit war crimes. These guys are tracking the war crimes of our time. But they're legit war crimes. If that happened in any other country on the planet, if Libya ever did that, which they never did, if Iraq ever did that, which they never did, we'd have NATO there, we'd have these warmonger Navy putrid pieces of shit murdering children for money and power and land. Right now it's land, but it's also oil and gas. They're going to take Palestine. They take everything because they own everyone. If they're not paying through the IMF and the central banks, they're blackmailing people with Epstein and Maxwell and Robert Maxwell. You know anything about any of this?
I know, obviously, of the Epstein case, yeah.
What do you know about it? You know it's run by the mega group, Les Wexner. It's an actual Zionist entity that created that blackmail ring that was working with Robert Maxwell, who's he's a Mossad spy, but he was given a burial in Israel for all his work blackmailing people to get shit happening in Israel. That's Ghislaine's daddy. Ghislaine has about 5 sisters. They all work for Israel, Zionist Israel, not the peaceful Israel. So and a lot to unpack, but you just got to get busy verifying truth. If anything I said is untrue, you can find out if it is or not. And if it's true, you can go, fuck, so they demolished Building 7. How the fuck did they do that?
So just in terms of the concrete steps that you'd like the Australian government to take, Albanese has said he'll recognise Palestine in September at the UN General Assembly. Yeah, what other steps would you like him to take?
He needs to recognise Palestine 2 years ago. He needs to go, this guy's a fucking war criminal. If he steps on his soil, he's arrested by our so-called government.
That's Benjamin Netanyahu.
All these guys have to spend their time doing this shit instead of finding the fucking serial killers that run rampant in Australia and even worse. So we need a whole new paradigm of like like government that works for the people. You watch a kid get shot 355 times with her family. These are kids. They're not doing anything. They're people. Every people is a people. It's like, God damn, you gotta stand up for the people that are being bullied, tortured, murdered, war crimes, super war crimes. So I don't know. People need to just stand up and fight evil with truth. And truth is always going to win. It might take 25 years for any truth to get out there, but it's always true if it's true. So speak truth to power. Tell Albanese to pull his finger out. Get solar on every roof and food trees on every verge so the people eat and we don't have to get nuclear power. And recognize Palestine and recognize these war crimes and stop giving them money and being blackmailed by idiot fucking degenerate scum warlords like Rupert Murdoch, who is a warlord, a war criminal. His whole family run the Australian brainwash of redneck Australia.
And just last question before we wrap up.
One more thing. I think this is amazing, but I think Australia itself, because most people are conscienceable and good, they need to know that we're all Australians and we're holding this flag instead of the Australian flag because this is the issue of our time. We'll hold the green and gold flag at the next one. Well, there'll be 50,000 green and gold flags because we care about Australia and everywhere else where they're doing evil, horrific shit. So yeah, what was the question?
And just in terms of the media coverage, what I'm
it's
sure
all shit. They don't put anything on. If you want media, you go to TikTok, you go to X, you go to YouTube, and you get more information in 2 hours than you will get on Australian television in 3 years. The ABC are compromised. They're a Zionist entity. We got Gillian Siegel. She's getting $400K a year to do what? She's married to a guy that hates Muslims, runs Advance Australia, and they're not doing anything about anti-Semitism. If they were doing stuff about anti-Semitism, they'd be going, this is wrong. They're murdering Semite peoples. The Palestinians are Semitic. They're Semites. It's not just a Jewish thing. And like I said, we've got many Jewish organizations here today and supporting us and trying to stop evil, because it is evil.
Well, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry about the rant.
That's all good. That's all good. All right, we have another interviewee here. So how long have you been involved in the pro-Palestine movement?
Well, since it began. My grandparents are part of it since the 70s. So basically my entire life.
Yeah. And so I imagine your grandparents had a pretty big influence on your views. What other things sort of inspired you to gravitate towards this side of the movement and to get involved more than just holding the views, to actually get involved in protest?
Yeah, my specific focus, about my grandparents, I'd say that was an influence, but sort of indirectly, just because of the sort of reading material and stuff I was exposed to when I was really young. But what my goal is a protest is I want to promote a line that Australia should separate from the USA and seek its own course in foreign policy. We shouldn't be puppets of the American imperialist empire. And just for the viewers watching that you can't see him, he's got a Eureka flag, so that I imagine that's connected. Take a look at that. Yeah, I've actually brought a delegation of people from my organisation, the Eureka Initiative here, where we're advocates for Australian independence, opposition to AUKUS, closing Pine Gap, ending the Five Eyes program and all that sort of stuff as well.
Well, I'd probably like to have you on my podcast at some stage, but if you don't want to, that's okay.
I can do that. We actually have people who could properly interview you.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, look, what's one thing about you or the protesters who come here or the pro-Palestine movement that the general public may not understand or you think should know?
Well, they get the impression that this is an alien issue forced overseas. So people think it's why are they focusing on sad stuff happens overseas? Well, why are they focusing on this? But they neglect that Australia is pretty deeply connected with this system. We might not be directly sending troops on the ground, and we're not Israel's biggest arms funder, but we're involved. We are puppets of the same American system, via the Five Eyes Agreement, which gives the CIA unlimited surveillance over Australians, AUKUS, all these defense agreements, Pine Gap, a secret military base and all that. So we're part of the same system of American hegemony, which doesn't benefit Australians either. and Palestine is connected, because that's where the Americans are testing their weapons. That's why they're testing like their AI targeting systems, and we're working with that, and we've signed ourselves up for like national suicide to protect America's interest in a future war with China. And like this sort of show, like the Palestine shows just how barbaric like the American imperialist system and the allies can get when it comes down to it. So if Australia doesn't get independence, then we're basically on the path to suicide. So the Palestine issue is directly relevant to people in Australia.
And just in terms of the tactics of the pro-Palestine movement, there's been some polling recently that seems to indicate that there's been an increase in support for, say, recognition of Palestine or just for the movement in general. Do you think that's more due to the like protest tactics, so marching over bridges and the campus encampments that we saw last year, or do you think that's more the news stories and the images coming out of Gaza, that sort of thing?
Well, it's because what Israel has done is just becoming harder and harder to defend. Because of a recent declaration of a famine in Gaza, the increase of a civilian death toll, it's becoming much harder for anyone to defend Israel. So I would say it is because of the news stories. The point of protests is to mobilize people, get people involved in political action, which could directly change stuff. Because public sentiment doesn't influence opinion unless it's backed up with some force. So you've got to have something to pressure the government, whether it be protests, strikes, civil disobedience, like running for office, and protests sort of get those people mobilized. So public opinion alone isn't what the protests affect, but it's protesting and organization is necessary to sort of achieve your goals.
And in terms of political organization, who do you think is a politician that you admire for their stance or their work on this issue?
Well, I mean, the Greens are the big ones with a focus on Palestine, and obviously I do volunteer for them. But I would say that I feel like a new approach is needed of a united front of all forces opposed to imperialism. Like, I'm a fan of quite a lot of variety of politicians, including people like Bob Katter, people who want like independence, even if they're not like with the Greens. Like, I think it needs to be a much broader course than just like a handful of parties on the traditional left. And I am of course very, very left wing. But I think you need to have like a united front against imperialism.
And just last couple of questions. Firstly, on media, I saw in some of the social media content advertising this protest in March, they said, there'll be some friendly media here, there'll also be some agitators. For you, what would you consider to be friendly media in the current environment?
I mean, I suppose there'd be people like you, who are like just like small, like, people who are just giving us like a chance to say what we want. As for agitators, I haven't seen any yet, but I do know sometimes they occasionally show up. So it's just started, and usually media people show up after the rally, so we'll have to see afterwards.
And last one, what do you think can be done to improve civil discourse in this country, media or like just in social interactions?
Well, I think the focus, as I said before, needs to be on anti-imperialism and separating Australia from this imperialist system. So independence, like direct focus on the specific manifestations of this imperialism, like at times of weapons companies like Palantir, which like Boeing, Lockheed Martin, they need to be a direct focus on these companies and like the actual forces. Because otherwise, if people just focus in vague platitudes, they can be appeased by stuff like Albanese's recent proposed recognition of Palestine, which is a really small half compromise, which recognises a few enclaves on the West Bank and only does so if Hamas is removed from power.
So what other steps would you like the Albanese government to take with regards to Palestine?
Well, I think we need to I think we need to sanction Israel. I think we need to recognise the Palestinian authority, not just the Palestinian Authority, but the government in Gaza as well. And I think we also need to, the most important thing is just charting an independent course from the USA, which means withdrawal from the AUKUS scam.
Well, thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi there, we have another interviewee. So how long have you been involved in the pro-Palestine movement?
It's just one of those humanitarian situations I've always, had in the periphery. I was somebody who was raised by a mum who took me to rallies, the anti-nuclear rallies of the early 80s. So it's just natural to me that when there's a problem, you get out on the streets and let people know you have a problem with it.
And what's one thing about yourself or the protesters who attend these protests or the movement, the Pro-Palestine movement, that the general public probably doesn't know or probably doesn't understand that you think they should?
I do think it's just, look around at the signs. It's not a war, it's a genocide. I think people do think that there's an element of self-defense and that they think there's an element of an actual war taking place, as opposed to just, what we actually see, those who actually seek out what those on the ground are sharing.
And in terms of practical steps from the Australian government, Anthony Albanese has promised to recognise the State of Palestine at the UN General Assembly in September. Are there any other steps that you'd like the government to take in regards to the issue of Palestine?
I mean, stop supplying weapons, stop supporting any kind of anything where we are in support by either offering funds, people, aid, or any kind of weaponry. We've really got to look at our role of responsibility. Yeah. You don't offer someone a weapon and then say, I'm so surprised they used that in a bad way.
And in terms of politicians who do you think's a politician who's done good work on this issue?
I'll be honest, I'm yet to find one.
That's all good.
Nobody with any power. There probably are some really good politicians out there, but unfortunately at the moment they're not holding positions of power.
Oh, yeah. And in terms of media, so what is your view on how the war in Gaza has been covered by the media?
From what I understand, I just think it's that thing where it's being portrayed as a war, if it's being portrayed at all, or it's a problem in another country. It's so far removed from us, we don't have to worry, we're all safe in our beds. And it's not that simple.
And in terms of, have you, have your personal relationships been affected by politics or just related to the Palestine issue? Has there been anything like that?
Personally, not for me, but I can see how it could divide families. I'm well known to be somebody who speaks up for human rights. I've been a dirty lefty my whole life, so nobody's surprised from me, but I am aware that there are people out there having to have those hard conversations of, is this a deal breaker? Can I still love this family member if they're in support of a genocide?
Yeah. Well, I think that does it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
So a comment I just wanted to make on the flags that we've seen here today. So in the past, at previous rallies, Sydney Harbour Bridge March, and some other events in Melbourne, wherever, there's been a bit of controversy as to the flags that have been flown. At some times there's been flags of prescribed terrorist organisations flown. There's been the Shahada flag flown, and the Shahada, to my understanding, is the Islamic Declaration of Faith, but that flag that has that on it, often with a green background or a black background, has been used by terrorist groups in the past few decades. Today, here, I didn't see any of those flags. There might have been some here, but I didn't see any of those explicitly, terror-supporting flags. I also didn't see any portraits of the Ayatollah of Iran, which has been another controversial thing that's been seen at protests in the past. What I have seen is obviously a lot of Palestinian flags. I've seen a lot of Indigenous flags, so Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander flags. And obviously there's a connection there between, in the minds of the protesters, between colonialism in Palestine and colonialism in Australia. Another few flags I've seen a bunch of Eureka flags. There was actually a chap we interviewed before, back in Queen's Gardens, and he's part of a group that advocates for Australian independence, so full independence, independent foreign policy, all of that. I've also seen some union flags. I've seen the Electrical Workers Union flag and the Lebanese flag as well. Also, I do see one, it's over there if you want to move the camera over there. There's one flag which is the Viet Cong flag, so the red and blue with the gold star. That's from the Vietnam War. And there have been some Marxists here, some communists and socialists, as well as progressives more generally. And maybe there's an ideological connection there with Marxism. Maybe there's another reason for that connection. I'm not sure. I haven't asked. But yeah, those are just a few comments on the flags I've seen here. Hello, so we are in Musgrave Park at the end of the march, and I've got someone here who has is it Viet Cong flag?
Viet Cong flag.
Viet Cong flag. And,
National Liberation Front of Vietnam, yeah.
Yep. And do you want to explain to people why this flag's here? I haven't seen any other copies of this flag, but yeah.
Sure, bro. I think there's a lot of parallels between this and what's going on in Gaza. They both were anti-fascist. They were both we're both anti-America. It's just a symbol for anti-colonialism for me, yeah. And as a leftist and someone as Vietnam, this is what I want to represent.
Yep. And so how long have you been involved in the Pro-Palestine movement?
I've been to a protest like a couple of years ago, like during one of the first ones, but this is my second one.
Oh, yeah. And have you been involved you said you were a leftist, did you say?
Yeah.
Yeah. So have you been involved in other causes previously?
No, not really. I've talked to I know there's a socialist like UQ groups, I've talked to them, but I've never joined anything.
Okay. Yep. And I mean, what's something about maybe not you personally, but about the types of people who come here and protest, or the movement that you think is not conveyed to the general public? What's something that they should know about the movement that they don't know?
Well, I think everyone already knows this, but it should be reaffirmed that anti-Zionism is not the same as anti-Semitism. That's one of the bigger points we should bring out more.
Yep. And Anthony Albanese, he's promised to recognise Palestine at the UN General Assembly in September. From a lot of the people I've interviewed here, that's not sufficient for them. What other concrete steps would you like to be taken?
In terms of real politic and what we are actually doing, I do actually think it's a good thing. Right? What Albanese is doing, sure, it's symbolic and it's not much, but it's something, and we should be doing more. We should be urging it, but it's still an achievement. Okay, it's still an achievement.
Yeah. With regards to some of the tactics, obviously you haven't been involved in the protests as much as some other people.
Yeah.
But in terms of the tactics of the pro-Palestine movement, like the bridge marching in Sydney and elsewhere, and the protest encampments at universities, do you think those tactics have done more to strengthen the movement, or do you think they've maybe alienated some people from the movement, for example, on university campuses? Or
which tactics are you talking about?
So, for example, like the encampment that happened at UQ, I spoke to some people who were supportive of it, and that brought more awareness. And also, I spoke to some people who saw it as an inconvenience, or people interrupting like engineering classes or something because of the ties to Boeing. What effect do you think that's had on the movement?
Well, I'm not too knowledgeable about the encampment, but what I do know is those events, in the greater scheme of history, are important, right? So even during the civil rights movement in America, they were blocking schools. Okay, this is the same thing. We should be doing that. Okay,
yeah.
It's leaving our mark in history. It's making a point.
Yeah, and this is a tough question for you. So there has been criticism in the past levelled at some of the pro-Palestine groups for chants like Intifada Revolution, people seeing that as a call for violence.
Yep.
And from the river to the sea, calling, as some people say, that's calling for the elimination of Jews in the Holy Land. What are your responses to that?
It's simply not. That's it. It's simply not. Arguing for the resistance and the freedom of Palestinian people, that's not arguing for the genocide of Jewish people. Just to be anti-Zionist does not mean you're anti-Jewish, okay?
Yeah.
So even if you support a one-state solution, two-state solution, that everyone knows we are not anti-Jew. No one here is anti-Jew, okay? That's my final point that I want to make clear.
Yeah. And final point, in terms of the news coverage of what's happening in Gaza, what have you, are there particular sources that you go to more, that you trust more with regards to their reporting than others?
Not necessarily. I look at everything, but I think you should look at everything, even though some are biased. But yeah.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Sure. No, take care, bro. Thanks for the interview.
Yeah, thank you. Cheers. So you actually happen to be my final interviewee of the day. So well done.
Thank
I
you
guess.
very much. I'm flattered.
Yeah. So the reason I came over is because you've got some pretty interesting kit on. Do you want to explain the why you've chosen to wear this today?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a clinical nurse consultant. I work in HIV and sexual health, as well as a bit of mid and all of that. I always attend protests in scrubs. I think it's an important message to send that healthcare workers are passionate about this. The issues in Gaza are, it's a health crisis. They're bombing hospitals, they're bombing maternity wards, and children deserve access to healthcare. That's a really important message to send, I think.
And how long have you been involved in the Pro-Palestine movement?
Probably for a very long time, more to the sidelines, really actively since the last 2 years.
Yep. And is this just is your involvement more central to this cause, or is it are you also involved in like party politics, like Greens or Labor or whatever?
I am a member of the Greens.
Oh yeah.
Yep. But yeah, I think this goes a lot beyond politics. I think we're trying to politicize what is ultimately a humanitarian crisis. People deserve access to food, they deserve access to water, they deserve access to healthcare, and I don't think that's a particularly political message.
Yeah. Well, Anthony Albanese has promised to recognise the state of Palestine at the General Assembly in September. I imagine you probably want some more steps than that, and if so, which steps?
I want Australia to stop supplying components that are making up weapons of mass destruction. I want an acknowledgement of the state of Palestine sooner. I think the reality is that we might not have a state by the General Assembly.
Well, in terms of the sort of tactics of the pro-Palestine movement, so marching over bridges, the encampments at universities, do you think those have had a net positive or negative effect? I know there's been recent polling that seems to indicate that there's increased support for the pro-Palestine movement. Do you think is due to those tactics, or is it more due to the news articles that are coming out on the situation in Gaza?
I think a bit of both. I think there's no coincidence around the timing of what we're estimating about 300,000 people going through Sydney Harbour Bridge, and then days later, Anthony Albanese coming out and saying he's going to recognise the state of Palestine at the next General Assembly. You know, I think we are moving the needle, but I think ultimately we are just bringing attention to what is appealing to people's humanity.
I've got a difficult question for you because I do have to fire some.
Absolutely.
So some people argue that recognising a Palestinian state now just rewards Hamas for hiding behind civilians or whatever, and that recognition should be conditional on democratic reforms in the Palestinian Authority or something like that. What's your response to that sort of sentiment?
I want democratic reforms in the state of Israel first. I think fundamentally we are making arguments and hypotheticals, and we're ignoring the fact that we do not have access to water in that region, we do not have access to food in that region. We are seeing what I think was 60, and if you have the number better than I think 63,000 is what we were estimating. 85% of all casualties in this conflict have been civilian casualties, and I think that we are putting the cart before the horse, really, in discussing anything else. We need access to water, food, and healthcare in that region.
And just in terms of media coverage, what's been your view, just quickly, on how it's been covered in the press?
I think mixed. I think to mixed results. I think we are seeing in this day and age so much more coverage from people on the ground on social media platforms, places like TikTok. I think that is having more of an effect than anything else. Although I absolutely commend the journalists that are still currently in Gaza, and the photos that came out of malnourished children just a couple weeks ago were horrifying. From a healthcare perspective, I think a lot of medical professionals are saying even if we were to supply food to that region tomorrow, still a lot of those children are going to die. They are so malnourished that they are unable to really come back from that.
Well, and lastly, what was it? I mean, would you do an interview with like a mainstream media or?
Absolutely. I think this is. I don't think I'm the person for this message. I think there are people more articulate. I think there are people with who are better informed. But I will absolutely continue to echo the sentiments that this community is trying to espouse. And again, the sentiment just purely from a humanitarian perspective of food access, water access, and healthcare.
Well, the reason I asked is because some people that I've interviewed and spoken to don't trust the legacy media or mainstream media as much, but some of them have been willing to do an interview with me, others preferred not to, and just trying to figure out what it is that people like or that they're okay with in terms of interviewing. But we're trying to build with my podcast, we're trying to build a space for civil discourse. I've got people from across the political spectrum on, giving them time to express their own views and provide pushback and ask them tough questions like I did with you before. But it's great to hear that you're willing to do all of this interviewing and all this stuff.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Cheers. Have a good one.
So that brings us to the end of our interviews and pieces to camera at the Pro-Palestine march here in Brisbane on the 24th of August. It was interesting. I haven't actually been to a protest before, so it was interesting to come here for the first time and interview some people, see what their motivations are for coming on, because a lot of people have certain opinions on different political topics, but it's another step to come out in public and express those views and go to protests. So we spoke to different people. We spoke to some socialists or Marxists. We spoke to just mainstream progressives. We spoke to people who wanted their faces shown, people who didn't, and we got a good demographic range with age groups and all of that. So, it was interesting to see it in the flesh, in person, and I'm sure I'll have more reflections in due course, but overall, didn't see any, as I said before, didn't see any terrorist flags, didn't see any portraits of the Iranian Ayatollah, anything like that. There seemed to be, mostly just Palestinian flags with a few others mixed in, and the chants were some of the standard chants that you hear at pro-Palestine marches. Anyway, thanks for joining us, and I'll see you next time.